80s I started drawing various things. The paper seemed to hold the penwork that I do. I use biros. I found that in fact, since school, I found that the drawing with the biro was quite helpful. And the point about the drawings is that they should be towards tapestries. And it helps me to focus an idea for a tapestry and sharpen my commitment towards making a tapestry. The sketchbooks are to help my tapestry and possibly to put down things that were influencing me, and also to ask questions to say what would happen if I did this or that. They're a chance to experiment without putting up a warp and starting to weave an idea. We've moved on 10 years, so I suppose it's early 90s. I was using the idea of something called a wiggle, which is a piece of steel which has been bent in a series of curves, a meander. In those days, I liked to do quite detailed drawings of how the tapestry should look. And that's quite helpful, but it also means that sometimes that the pleasure, the interest of discovery is already done with the drawing. The advantage is that when I come to start weaving, I'm assured, I know what I'm doing, and it's a good thing. And it comes, these are now coming towards the one that the Craft Council eventually bought, I think in the late 90s. And what colour should it be? It seemed to be, I was working with jute, and either jute used in a wrapping way or as pile. And the jute goes this interesting sort of tawny colour, and I thought the turquoise blues were the right thing for it. The Panel Assurance commission was really just about strips of colour and the way that the wiggle quality made those strips float in a meandering way, and they had to hang high up in a refectory, so you would see them from below, and you would get it would bring out the curved quality. This, in the end, was the design for the one that's called Blue Receiving Tapestry that the Craft Council have. And I think also starting to think about the possibility of the warp showing in some way. And I think that leads eventually to using fishing line. structures here. It's the form that's grown out of a potential commission for something to do with Sir Richard Burton, the Victorian, of whose work there is a holding, an archive at Orleans House Gallery. And there was something called the Sir Richard Burton Hussif. And it intrigued me. Hussif is a sewing kit that you carried about with you. And his had been specially made up by his sister-in-law. And it remained intact, and he must have taken it with him on his travels. So it was quite interesting to have something that could unfold and had components in it. I had been making a series of scrap pages on various subjects, loosely called classical interests. And so the idea of the collections, these are ordered things, and they have other ordered things on top of them, so that there is a possibility of a screen or a grid. And tilting them at an angle fascinated me, because in tapestry weaving you have very vertical warps that you have to operate. Eventually, the idea of human faces, and a range of notables who all received titles, awards for the coronation in 1953. But there was something just about them being in black and white, and these honoured people ranged up. And then I could enjoy the idea of these floating grids. We are now into the 21st century, and the sketchbooks have really become what I would call ideas books. So I'm enjoying scraps, objects that have appealed to me, that have spoken to me, things that I find intriguing, and it's nice to arrange them and to put them together. And my aim is not to have any white paper. Graphic work, patterns, spots. I'm thinking, would I be interested to weave this area or a part of it? This one, the yellow, I loved making a ground. I then just idly made a construction of shapes that I would like to weave. And that, in the end, I wondered if it could be a very fitting tapestry. And before I would embark on weaving something like that, I would make samplers. And the sampler is this chance to make real what the design suggests. That corner there, I would make this piece, trying to get an equivalent of the spottiness there, that edge, which is a lovely curve. I did enjoy making these different sized knots, and also trying out the pink lines that are working on that passage. Verticals, well, I thought it was an opportunity to make them go at an angle, and this is my equivalent. And on the other side, this is quite mysterious. It could have been woven very flat. It might well be woven very flat with these cloudy forms, but I made a chunky version. It's really just a version of that area and another form of these blobs against the blue background. Lines of knotting which make a sort of tubular quality. Finally, this area, I again enjoyed myself trying to create a version of the pattern that's gone on there. There seems to be brown spottings, and then there's a sort of lattice work going on over it. And I've made an equivalent here. Here we come across, I can just feel it. This is from another page, another sketchbook. It's a design for a tapestry. It was drawn up when I was staying in Copenhagen, and I had a few hours on my hands, and it's quite nice to be able to then consider it and take it seriously. And I put it against a background of something called Visigata pan work, which tends to be in black and white. It's good to be able to think about the practical business of translating an initial idea which is in this graphic form into the final tapestry. And I do things that we call samplers, and they are versions in tapestry. They're quite narrow, and they act as a way of getting working towards the reality of the design worked in the materials that I think I would like to have in the final tapestry. And a lot of things get ironed out in that setting. I've probably got an idea about the translation of this area, and I wanted to have, in this case, it was a sort of textured and rows of knots at an angle, and in this case, I've decided to have much chunkier knots with a finer furrow of close weaving, so that there is a recession, a groove almost. On the right-hand side, it's a fairly earnest translation of the blobs, this sort of pattern, and I've used yarn that's normally it's designed for needlepoint. It's quite puffy, but the effect I want is a little bit like the colours of the felt tip pen, perhaps with slight variations. Moving up to these areas, the design has angled lines. I felt I wanted something that wasn't so rigidly linear, and so I made a system where I wove the background and then worked the knots, wove the background with creating a sort of wedge, and then worked the knots trundling on top of the wedge, and that created a a sort of regular angle, and it wasn't as rigid as this. It was more broken up, more dotted, and I wanted to see how it worked with the other colours, the pale yellow and the blue. Just to animate the red background, I used areas of finer weaving. I should say that the background red is double warps, whereas these circular forms are in a finer close weave. And yet another sampler, which is just dealing with this section underneath. This became an essay in knotting and quite nice neutral shades, and then going on to the combination of quite chunky red backgrounds and then close, finely woven reds, which physically gives a more recessed effect. So those explorations and discoveries are taken up in the final tapestry.